Good evening and welcome to 30 Minutes. I'm your host, Rebecca Anderson. Joining me tonight for the first time in 2 years are Jay and Wynona, the billionaire. We haven't seen you in a while. I heard you retired. Can you tell me what you've been doing?
Sure. Well, I've been retired now for 2 years, and my son Michael took over as CEO and president of Nero Shoes. So this has really freed me up to do things I wouldn't have had much time to do. Wynona and I went all over the world. I mean, as you know, I love the Bahamas. We've been spending a lot of time, particularly in these winters, down there. We also have our home in Arizona. We've spent a fair amount of time there, going to the Grand Canyon. And here, in the upper Midwest, we own a home by Bayfield. So, we've been sailing on Lake Superior. And, our river home that we have in Little Falls. I've been out fishing every night that I can, and I tell you, it's a real challenge trying to catch a catfish. I mean, they put up one heck of a fight. Just recently we took a trip to the North Shore and saw Grand Portage State Park, Taguchi State Park. We went to Canada, to Kakabeka Falls, west of Thunder Bay. Absolutely gorgeous waterfalls. If anyone ever gets a chance, I highly recommend it. So we've been enjoying our retirement, and I must say that I expressed my concerns a few years ago about how Michael would do, as the CEO and president of Nero Shoes. His Born in the USA strategy, bringing production back to the U.S. The workers voting to become union and all the added expenses that would bring. I thought this was going to be a disaster for Nero, but instead, Nero's been more profitable than ever. I mean, I can't believe I'm saying that, but his new strategy has really worked. In fact, Nero's expanded. They've opened up plants in Canada, Great Britain. Michael's seriously considering opening up plants in Australia, Japan, maybe even the land of our ancestors, Germany. Where my grandfather, Hans Billionaire, came from. So now we are really excited about all this.
That's wonderful. Now I hear that, was it Michael or Mark who got married?
Mark.
Mark.
Yes.
Okay.
And it was a beautiful wedding last fall. We were so proud of him and Tom. And Tom's like a member of the family, and he's done really well too as the new director of marketing too. I mean, Mark taught him a lot, and I tell you what, that Born in the USA ad, with Bruce Springsteen's famous Born in the USA song, I mean, it won Clio Awards, and I mean, it really is a memorable tune.
Was this Mark's husband's idea?
Yes. Yeah.
Oh.
I mean, he, because we were, Michael brought production back to the USA, and of course, Nero Shoes started in the USA, so it was born in the USA,
It's a wonderful marketing idea. How about you, Wynona? What have you been doing?
Oh, well, I've just been enjoying my time spent with my great husband here, and following the election, because I have my favorite amongst the candidates, and we'll talk about that in a little while. But also, when we've been traveling, I've been searching out other women's fashions and so on. And when I was at my Honduras clothing factory, I happened to notice this lovely gown that they were producing. So I brought it back as a kind of a souvenir of that, and I'm proud to wear that around. And it's a good marketing tool to wear the outfits that we're producing.
Very lovely.
It's very comfortable, and I love clothes and glitzy things. And I've got this new line of glasses. I started to show, remember 2 years ago I was showing you some of the new glasses, because we produce those as well. And so this is one of the newest frames.
Very flattering.
Yeah, thank you. And so I've just been enjoying my retirement.
Good. Well, let's talk about the presidential election. That's what's on everyone's mind these days, and I've been eager to find out how you two are feeling about the candidates. Let's start with you, Wynona. Who are you supporting?
Well, I just absolutely love Donald Trump.
Okay.
Everything about that he stands for, and how he debates, and how he carries himself, the things that are important to him are also important to me.
Okay.
And Jay and I watched the show. It
was
kind of a show.
Oh, yeah.
The most recent debate last night, which
Right.
was the 19th of October,
That's right.
and the final debate. I just think that he out-Trumped Hillary in every way. And I'm just proud of him. And even the commentators that they, the liberal media tries to spin things in the way that, to make him look like the bad guy always. But there are, thank goodness, conservative media hosts that counter that. And I'm so proud of them. The two blonde gals especially that stand up for him, and the white-haired gentleman. I forget his name, but they do a great job backing him up. So I'm a Trump fan all the way, and I hope to get to one of his rallies here before the election, because I'd really like to hear him speak in person. Jay and I know him from a long time ago, way back before he was even rich and famous.
Wow.
We know him going back quite a long way.
Back to the 70s, yeah.
When was he not rich, at least?
He's always been rich, but not as famous.
But not as famous. That's
Richer.
Yeah, oh yeah,
Right.
most definitely richer than when we started.
Right, but I have one little thing that he's not gonna see this show probably, but if I get to a campaign rally where he's speaking, I hope to really convince him that he hasn't focused enough on the issue of money.
Oh, he hasn't focused enough on money.
No,
Okay.
because money, whether the people are watching him are wealthy or not, money is the big issue, the biggest issue that trumps everything in the campaign. And, everyone wants more money.
How about you, Jay? Are you a Trump supporter?
Absolutely not.
No?
No, I mean, like Wynona said, I've known Donald Trump not very well, but I've met him a few times over the years. We've been to his casinos and hotels a few times. Been to a few of his parties. But no, his stance on immigration is the exact opposite of mine. As you know, I'm very much pro-immigration, open borders. He's also, and this is where my thinking has evolved. When we first met, on the show 4 years ago, I used to be quite hawkish, but, after having done some more research on the issue and talking with, our daughter Melissa, I'm convinced that these wars are wrong, that the United States would be better off, staying out of these conflicts like in Iraq and Syria and Afghanistan. And Donald Trump at times has said some things that, indicate that he too didn't think the United States should be nation building overseas. But then the next day or two he'll say, well, we should send 20,000 troops to Iraq and take the oil. So he contradicts himself. And these allegations too recently of this horror, if it is true, of him groping women and it just about amounts to sexual assault. And there's no way I could support someone like that for president. So I thought about supporting Rand Paul, but unlike his father, the former Congressman Ron Paul, he's not nearly as consistent when it comes to civil liberties and peace, non-intervention as his father is. So I support Gary Johnson, the Libertarian Party candidate.
Would you call yourself a libertarian?
Yes, and this is a change. I mean, people who, I'm sure our viewers remember that I was a Republican, a very staunch Republican, had been since Ronald Reagan. In fact, I stumped for Ronald Reagan back in 1984. Very close friends with the Reagan family. Wynona and I are still close friends, with Nancy. So we.
But dear, I hate to interrupt you, but I just want to say, there's no way that our friend Donald would ever have, no matter what that tape says, that really was locker room talk. That was boys talking with boys. Boys will be boys. I mean, let's face it. I think people should be able to talk the way that they would in real life, wherever they are, whether it's on the debate stage or anywhere else. And we have to nowadays be so concerned about this political correctness. And, that's one thing that the left really focuses on, is that everything has to be so politically correct. And you remember when we've been at parties, and I didn't always look like this. We've known them for a long time, and I used to wear really low-cut evening gowns, and I was really dressed pretty provocatively, and Donald's never come on to me or any woman that I've ever seen him be around in any of the parties, even when the booze was flowing.
I will, again, we've been to those parties, and I will say I've never seen him actually do the things he mentioned in that tape. But, the old expression, where there's smoke, there's fire, and when you have so many women coming out accusing him, and he's bragging about this type of conduct, you have to wonder if there isn't some substance to it. I hope not. I personally hope not. But I don't know. It's enough. Even just the way he's talking, even if it's in private, it's just, especially as a father of a daughter, it just really disgusts me to think that he would treat women that way.
So you think that Gary Johnson is the better man on many counts, but how do you feel about his lack of knowledge in foreign policy?
You're probably referring to when he was struggling to know where Aleppo is, and that's understandable. Thing is, sometimes it's hard for a candidate to keep up with all the issues, or maybe know where a particular city is in Syria or Iraq. But Gary's heart's in the right place. We've met a few times, and I've gotten to know him some over the last year, and he is strongly anti-war. He wants peace. I mean, this country's been a consistent, constant war now for 15 years. Gary wants to end that. He wants to bring the troops home. He wants to take care of the many pressing problems we have here. And so, yeah, maybe he doesn't know all of the geography where every city in Iraq or Syria is, and maybe he stumbles when he's asked, what foreign leader he admires. But I would much rather have a presidential candidate who's humble enough, like Gary is, to admit that, I don't know, and I'll have to look this up, than someone like Hillary Clinton, who's extraordinarily knowledgeable about foreign affairs, who knows her geography, and yet she's getting us involved in all these wars. As we know, she persuaded President Obama 5 years ago to attack Libya. She was also a very strong supporter of the Iraq War. She encouraged President Obama to escalate U.S. involvement in the Afghan War. She also played a role in starting the civil war in Syria by supporting the arming of the rebels. So, she's very hawkish, very aggressive. So she may be more knowledgeable on foreign affairs, foreign policy than Gary Johnson is, but unlike him, her heart on that is not in the right place as far as wanting to continue these wars, which need to stop. I mean, we need to get out, and we need to take care of the many issues we have here at home. So,
But I just want to inject this. If we don't have perpetual war and we're not constantly on the lookout for these, especially Muslim aggressors, like both Trump and Hillary are concerned about, so much of our money is invested. People's pensions plans are invested in the war manufacturers, and we're so heavily vested as a country. We need that to continue our economy. I'm really concerned it would fall apart.
Well, I see your concerns there, but the thing is, we could, just like after World War I and World War II, we could convert to a more peacetime economy. Instead of manufacturing tanks and jet airplanes, we could be manufacturing cars.
Yes, but these Islamic jihadists, they're not going to stop. They're going to keep on pushing us, and we have to strike back. We have to be ready to take them out.
At one time I shared your views on this, and I'm sure our viewers remember that too, but I've become convinced we've been doing the same thing over and over again for the last 15 years, since September 11, 2001, been attacking different countries, Afghanistan, Iraq, Libya, Syria, Somalia, Pakistan, Yemen, and yet we still have terrorist incidents. We're obviously doing something wrong. The definition of insanity is to keep doing the same thing over and over again, getting the same result, but expecting a different result.
Yes, but
terrorism has been...
There goes our money.
Well, actually, dear, I've been starting to withdraw my investments, from the war industries and put them in peacetime uses.
My money's going to stay in the war industry because I know that's where the big dollars are.
This is interesting watching you two, because you used to be on the very same page on everything, and now you've got very different points of view. Has this affected your relationship?
Wynona and I are as close as we've ever been. We love each other very dearly. And the thing is, a good couple should be able to disagree with each other without being disagreeable.
Right, like Carvel and Mary Madeline, they go at it.
They do.
Tooth and nail, and then
make up.
They have a plenty good, nice relationship outside of TV and so on. Their relationship is just fine.
I'm sure. How about your children? Are they politically opinionated and active?
My husband speak to that.
Very much so. Since the time they were old enough to understand politics, all of our children, have been very much politically engaged. And, it's interesting how things have turned out this election year. In the past, Michael always supported, where we stood. Now, even we have different opinions, so, you could just about tell where he was going to vote based on where we were going to vote. But Michael can't stand Donald Trump, thinks he's, misogynistic and just a big mouth, and, doesn't agree with him on immigration either. And so he's supporting Hillary Clinton. It's the first time he's ever supported a Democrat. So he doesn't consider himself a Democrat, but in this case he considers her to be the lesser of two evils. He just cannot support Donald Trump. So he's supporting Hillary Clinton. And our youngest son, Mark, he is supporting Dr. Jill Stein with the Green Party. Now, he supported Bernie Sanders when Bernie Sanders was running in the Democratic primaries, was a strong Bernie supporter. You really felt the burn, so to speak. Mm-hmm. But when Bernie dropped out and endorsed Hillary Clinton, he could not support Hillary because she is much too hawkish. Mark also was very strongly anti-war. And so he decided to support Dr. Jill Stein, who's a pro-peace candidate like Gary Johnson.
So now we've got Trump, Johnson, Clinton, and Stein. And who's like Melissa? What is she?
Well, Melissa's always been kind of the iconoclast of the family. She's not supporting any candidate this year. None of them come close to her libertarian socialist beliefs. Perhaps if the Socialist Labor Party or the World Socialist Party of the United States were running a candidate, she might vote for them, but they're not. So none of these candidates, come close to her worldview, so she's not voting.
And that really bothers me, because that seems like about the most unpatriotic thing a person could do is to not vote. When we have that privilege in this country, if someone decides to not vote, it's the most foolish thing ever. And even voting for Gary Johnson, he knows how I feel about this, and we argue about this from time to time. He's throwing his vote away. Now, who would ever do something foolish like that? And anybody voting for Jill Stein, again, it's just throwing the vote away. So you're either giving the vote to Trump or to Hillary.
So you think we should stay with a two-party system and not ever have a third?
Absolutely.
Option.
It's the biggest part of our democracy. It's whoever would not want our two-party system. Oh, what a foolish thing to consider that.
Well, one time I shared Wynona's views, but there's just no way in good conscience I can support Donald Trump. Nor can I support Hillary Clinton. She was way too aggressive on foreign affairs issues. Plus, she has her own serious ethical issues. She's not very good on civil liberties, so I just can't support her either. And see, that's the thing. You believe in a two-party system, and that's been the tradition in American politics almost pretty much since the time of the founding.
Absolutely.
But we need more parties. We need more ideas. I mean, watching the debate last night, you put it best there. You said it was a show, and it really was, and at times a very entertaining show. I mean,
it is
almost
that.
thought we were going to have a professional wrestling match at times between Donald Trump
and the one before, too.
Oh, yes. Well, all three of them have been quite entertaining. In fact, watching them, I almost thought I was watching a spoof of a debate on Saturday Night Live.
Oh my gosh.
But this is sad. This is sad. Our presidential debate should be much more dignified than this, instead of these personality-driven, mudslinging contests. And see, this is where I think third-party candidates come in. Had Gary Johnson been on that debate stage, had Dr. Jill Stein been there, Darrell Castle from the Constitution Party, Mike McEvelin, who's running as an independent candidate, there's several other candidates too. I think we would have had a better debate. As a matter of fact, I should let your viewers know that come Tuesday, October 25th, there will be a debate by the Free and Equal Elections Group, and it's going to be held at the University of Colorado in Boulder. And I think it's 4 o'clock Mountain Time there, 5 o'clock here. I believe C-SPAN will be showing it. And Free and Equal has invited all the presidential candidates who would at least be able to represent 10% of the people. There are enough ballots that could represent 10% of the American people. So altogether, 9 political parties, including the Democrats and Republicans.
Well, we'll have to invite some friends over for that here. I wasn't aware of that till just now. This is news to me. But we'll have to have a big party, because that's going to be the best entertainment of all.
Well, I think it'll actually be a much more substantive, a much more serious debate. These candidates
Really?
oh yes, I think they'll be talking more about the issues. maybe a little more about their own ideology. I mean, you'll have socialists and libertarians and Greens and independents all in the same room. So I think in that sense it might be a bit entertaining, but I think it'll be a better. It won't be so much, oh, you know, she's a bad person or, you know, he's a bad guy type of debate like we've seen with Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton. I mean, it's really sad. More issue driven. And, you know, it's really sad when you think of how these debates degenerated. I mean, I watched all three of them, and you saw where the first debate, Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump shook hands before and after the debate.
Yes.
Second debate, they did not shake hands before the debate, but they shook hands after the debate.
And that was a shame.
They didn't shake hands at all.
And I kept thinking last night as I watched him exit the stage, in that he's my guy, that he wouldn't have the decency. And I was really disappointed, and it's hard for me to say this, but I was disappointed that he wasn't the bigger person. And even as they exited off the stage, I think I was hoping and waiting for him to just walk over to her, find her in the crowd, and be the one to cordially shake her hand. He should have done that.
Mm-hmm. Well,
in my opinion, he should have done that.
Or
Hillary never done it. I was hoping, my man.
Well, she might have too. You're absolutely right. One of the two should have done it. You know, reached out to the other one. And it's also sad that Donald Trump is saying that, you know, unless he wins, at least as of right now, he might not accept the election results. I think that's, you know, sad. And
I think that's all theater, that he's so used to shows that are entertaining that he wants to keep Americans on the edge so that they don't know what he's going to do next. I think that's part of his strategy.
He likes being unpredictable.
It's like a cliffhanger. Now, there is one other thing we haven't addressed yet, and that is the issue of Melissa not voting, or other people not voting.
Yeah.
And you say that's unpatriotic of her not to vote. I disagree with you, dear. I mean, for one thing, in our country, we don't have compulsory voting laws. There are some nations that do it, and democracies like Australia that you know you have to vote, although they don't always enforce it. But here, you know, it's your option whether you want to vote or not. It's your right, but you are free not to exercise that right. And you know, Melissa and I have talked about this, and she just cannot find a candidate to support. She feels like she would be throwing her vote away to vote for a candidate she did not honestly support. And you mentioned that, you know, you need to vote for one of the two major party candidates.
Absolutely.
You know, that if not, you're throwing your vote away. Well, for me, if I don't vote out of principle, then I'm throwing my vote away. If I'm voting for the lesser of two evils, instead of voting for someone I believe is the best candidate for the job, I know, and Gary Johnson knows, he's not going to win. But you know what? In my opinion, he's the best candidate for president of the United States this year, and I'm going to vote for him, and probably so.
But it's so pointless to vote for someone, whether it's Jill Stein or Gary Johnson or any of those other that you mentioned that are going to debate on this stage and magically figure out everything. I don't believe that's going to happen, and they don't have a chance in heck against this wonderful two-party system we have.
Well, part of the reason they don't have a chance is because our two-party system perpetuates itself. I mean, like these debates. I mean, you know, they're run, this bipartisan presidential debate committee, commission, what is it called? Commission on Presidential Debates. It's ran by the Democratic and Republican parties, and they have set very stringent rules in place. You have to have, 15% of the voter support in 3 major national opinion polls, and that's a very tough hurdle for most third-party candidates to meet. I mean, the only one who ever did was Ross Perot in 1992. I mean, we've had some great third-party candidates in recent years, whether it was Ralph Nader, or Pat Buchanan, or Dr. Stein, or Gary Johnson, and none of them have been able to take part in these debates. They've been shut out.
Mm-hmm.
And so therefore, the American people, for the most part, unless you tune into C-SPAN or you go on the internet, you know, they don't get to hear their views, you know.
But no, what's going to happen with money if we don't have the two-party system? We know there's a huge amount of money in that. And that's what I love about it. One of the main things I love about it. So let's say, for instance, we spread this throughout maybe 15, 20 different candidates. How's anybody going to make any money off that?
I don't know.
Well, I mean, look at all the money that's being made.
Oh, it's interesting to see Jay Billionaire stumped. But she did it.
Well, I don't think, as far as Gary Johnson's concerned, he's a libertarian. Gary believes just as strongly as I do in capitalism. If Gary became president, we'd actually have free enterprise than we do now.
Yeah, but that would mean that, okay, say for instance, then my money, I can't just put my money on one guy.
You're saying as a someone who contributes
Oh,
to
yeah,
candidates, you'd be worried about having to split up your money.
exactly.
Oh, I see, I didn't get that either. Okay.
Yeah, I was kind of wondering too, but now I understand where you're coming from.
Yeah.
Well, the thing is, you could always do, and you could give, say most of your money to Donald Trump, and then maybe a little bit if you like Gary Johnson, or a little
Oh,
bit
no, never.
to,
One,
Darrell Castle.
One guy.
You like Darrell Castle? Well, he's pretty conservative.
Well.
If you told me that if Donald Trump were running, you might vote for Darrell. So,
well, but that's not possible because my Donald is running.
yes, he is. But the thing is, basically, you would just, give a big, some money to one candidate, maybe a smaller sum, and then maybe just a little bit. We're really good at that. We're business people. We know how to divide up.
But I
money.
can imagine that. But I have a question. If our Donald friend asks you who you voted for, are you going to actually tell them
Of
you
course.
voted for
Of course.
someone else?
Yes.
We won't probably never get back invited to the parties.
He'll probably invite you, but I could care less.
Oh, that's all right. I'll go by myself then. Oh, I love that.
Donald, that's one reason right there. Even if he was pro-peace, pro-immigration, I would still have a hard time voting for him because the man has an ego the size of the state of Texas. I could barely stand being in the same room with him, and that's truthful. And this was back in the 80s.
Mhm.
But so, if he doesn't invite you and he invites me, you're all right if I go by myself?
Absolutely.
Oh, thank you, dear.
Well,
Thank you.
let's move down the ballot a little bit. I'm interested in the 8th congressional district race, and I'd like to know who you find interesting there.
Well, it's a rematch this year between our representative, Rick Nolan, and Stuart Mills III. As you know, Stuart's a close family friend. I've known him since he was a wee little boy. Seen him grow up and take on the responsibilities of Mills Fleet Farm. Now, as you know, they sold it earlier this year, and he made quite a bit of money. Yeah, he's enjoying his money too. But the thing is, unlike 2 years ago when I was enthusiastic about Stuart and supporting him, gave a few speeches on his behalf, did some fundraisers, I can't support him this year.
Well, what's changed?
Well, it's a lot of it's me. Stuart hasn't changed. Other than cutting his hair. He had really long hair, and then he decided to trim it so the Democrats couldn't use that as an issue against him anymore. But he stayed pretty much the same. It's me that's changed. As you know, my thinking has evolved on war and peace issues. I used to be really hawkish. Now I'm pretty dovish. And Stuart is very hawkish. He wants to escalate U.S. involvement in Iraq and Syria. And I can't agree with that. And the other thing, too, is I've always been pro-immigrant. My mother, Francesca, God rest her soul, wonderful lady. She was an Italian immigrant.
She was.
God bless her.
She was a lovely lady.
She was. And so, Stuart, him being opposed to our nation giving refuge to Syrians who are fleeing from violence and persecution, that's just another issue he and I have an honest disagreement on. And so I just can't support him. But I can't support Rick Nolan either. As you know, I don't agree with his campaign tactics. I think at times he's gone into dirty campaigning. And he too, voted against admitting Syrian and Iraqi refugees to the United States last November, right after the ISIS attacks in Paris. And I don't know if he did that because of fear, which is understandable after those attacks, or if he did that maybe to take away an issue from the Mills campaign, if it was a bit opportunistic on Representative Nolan's part. It hasn't helped him though. The Mills campaign is still running ads saying that he wants to let 100,000 Syrians into the U.S. But bottom line is, I really strongly disagree with that vote. And my father, Paul, if he were alive today, he would be very disappointed with Nolan. In fact, I think he would have gotten on the phone with him and called him and said, "Why'd you vote that way?" With Rick. They marched together in the 70s against the Vietnam War, and I don't know. He would be very, very saddened by that vote. So the thing is, and another thing is, one thing about me that has not changed is I'm a very strong Second Amendment supporter. I believe in gun rights. And back in June, Representative Nolan was one of many of the House Democrats who took part in the sit-in, in the House of Representatives, calling upon the Republican House leadership to let them vote on legislation that would deny people who are on the no-fly list the right to purchase firearms. Now, the problem I have with that is that no-fly list has been created by the PSA. And there's no real criteria for who gets on it. It's pretty much a bureaucrat's whim. And many innocent people have been put on that no-fly list. The fact of the matter is, most of the people on that no-fly list have not been convicted of any crime. Most of them haven't even been charged. And if you're going to take away someone's Second Amendment right to own a firearm, they better be convicted of a criminal offense, a serious criminal offense. And even Representative Nolan expressed some doubts about the TSA no-fly list and whether this violates civil liberties, but he still went ahead and participated in that sit-in. And I was really disappointed about that too. But I've known for a long time that Rick and I don't see eye to eye when it comes to gun control, so I just can't support him. And it's just a darn shame that there's not a libertarian candidate running.
Is this going to have an effect on your relationship with the Mills family, do you think?
Not very much. The thing is, I've known Stuart since he was a little boy, and, he is a nice man. He really
Yes, he
is.
is.
A very kind, good-hearted person, one of the politest people you'll ever meet. And he and I talked about this. I mean, we talked about it a year ago. And when I let him know that I just could not support his campaign, because of these disagreements that he and I have, he understood. I mean, we agreed to disagree. But, just earlier this month, his father received an award from Brainerd High School, their Distinguished Alumni Award, and I was very proud of Stuart Mills Jr. And I was there to congratulate him on the award, and Stuart was there, and we had a nice conversation afterwards. And I think Stuart and I will still be good friends.
And Stewie knows that I support him.
Okay.
Because Stuart's main interest, of course, is making sure that people who have plenty of money are able to keep their money, as it should be. We worked hard to get where we're at. And even if we got old money that we started off on from our ancestors, it's still our money. And if we are smart enough to wisely invest it, why should we not be able to keep government off our back? Get out of the way, like so many good Republicans say.
Well, could I ask you a question then? Is that why you moved to Honduras, among your many holdings? But I understand that Honduras is your particular baby.
Yes, it is.
And that you own it independently of Jay and okay.
Right, and I don't want to have anyone else have a say in some of my business affairs. And I'm not particularly concerned about workers' rights. If they're paid what my staff feel they should be paid, according to the labor, that's equivalent in their area, if we're paying them the same or a little bit more, we're actually lifting them. To me, it doesn't matter if the work conditions are a little unpleasant or, if they don't have an adequate way to get out of the building, and God forbid a fire or something, it's up to them to figure that kind of stuff out.
Okay. And you're not concerned that your factory in Honduras is taking away jobs? We know that Michael and Tom are working on this Born in the USA campaign. How do they feel about your Honduras?
Well, of course, they don't like some of the ways that my company skirts the regulations.
Okay.
My family knows that I don't believe in all these regulations. Why do we need all them? I mean, seriously, if my factories are helping anybody to have a job and still the conditions aren't exactly right, well, so what? It's my right as a business owner to
You still
run
feel
my.
as if you're doing them a favor?
Oh, absolutely. I'm providing a lot of jobs, and they're making a little bit more than they would doing their menial little jobs that they normally do down there. And I'm not worried about. This is another country, and that's part of the reason I went there. I don't like all these regulations here in this country. And what better place to skirt them than in another country?
And you're finding that successful? for your
Absolutely,
business?
more money. Money.
If I may say, it is Wynona's concern, 100%. And I don't know, just seeing the way Michael has done business, it's been a revelation for me. I used to think that my father, when he did business, a very similar way, union friendly, respecting all the regulations and rules, paying his fair share of taxes. I used to think he was a bit foolish doing that. And, so that's why when I took over Nero's Shoes, we changed things and we built our plants in Mexico and then later on China and Malaysia. And I thought when Michael relocated production back to the United States. He was making a huge mistake, tried to talk him out of it, but he was hell bent on doing it. So, and these last 2 years, he's proven me wrong. Sales in shoes have gone up. I mean, the company, which used to always be the target of, this show and the show up in Canada, True Sleuths and other programs, and used to be ranked real low, in terms of, publicity and, its rankings, for workers' rights and environmental protection. Now it's like one of the top.
Yeah.
And, people are actually no longer picketing outside the corporate headquarters. Yeah, we used to have to deal with pickets all the time. Instead, some of these people are now, congratulating us and saying, the company's turned things around. And part of me wishes I had done business that way. I wish I could go back in time and do things a little differently. But, Michael has carried on, and, I'm very proud of him. And I hope someday, Wynona will, learn from his example. That you can do business ethically, you can respect workers' rights, you can respect the environment. If your workers wish to have unions, you can respect their right to, organize. And you can still be profitable, very profitable, as he's shown. I tried to encourage her to, maybe look into Nicaragua. In Nicaragua, the government sets pretty good standards, and much higher standards as far as wages and working conditions, than they have in Honduras, but I'm afraid you just don't want to do that.
Not yet.
Well, and then we have some underage people coming to us at the Honduras factory wanting work, and I tell my staff if they can just turn the other way and maybe not be so fussy about the age filling out in that job application, if they just can go upwards a little bit, that those young people then are making money that they never would be able to make. And maybe they don't want to go to school, but they'd rather work a job. I don't think that's taking advantage of children, that's helping them.
Well, how young do you allow?
Well, not younger than, say, probably 13 or 12, or depending on if we need errands run, maybe a little younger than that, but...
Wynona, when was the last time your factory was inspected?
Well, I don't know, and if there was a problem, I wouldn't say anyway, of course. But.
Well, of course not. But however, you are confessing on national television that you have some substandard policies.
But that's in another country, and their standards aren't as high, and, well, they are good in other countries at turning a blind eye at certain things, so I'm not worried.
Okay. Well, in closing, I think we're coming close to the end of our time. Do you have any last thoughts on the election? Let's start with you, Wynona.
Well, just that I hope I can go to whatever states and cities he's going to focus on, because I really want to see him and encourage him to concentrate on what is most important in this election. And we all know it. Even you know it, Jay. It's just, some people fool themselves that this isn't the most important thing, but it is. I'll let you go on.
I don't think I can beat that, but yes, money is important. And the thing is, I think our nation will be much more prosperous if we elect Gary Johnson as president. He'll unleash our engines of creativity, productivity in this country. And I really think the most important issue in this election is peace. The United States is now at war in 7 different countries, and she brings up the money issue. Just imagine how much that costs. We're talking billions, sometimes literally trillions of dollars.
But it makes money as well. I'm playing devil's advocate,
Sure.
or Wynona's advocate here. It makes money as well.
It does, but it's the wrong sort of money to make, destroying things instead of building things. Yes, you can make, and I have, and I confess, and although I'm taking my money out of the war industry, but you can make a lot of money that way. But I would rather have money be made, building highways, bridges, maybe a few clean energy plants, like solar power, that sort of thing,
Can we give just a minute to environmental issues?
Sure.
You don't have any oil investments, as I understand.
That's correct, I have it for a while now.
Okay, and you deliberately divested yourself of that?
Yeah, I mean, I think fossil fuels, while we need them, I think we need to make more and more of a transition to clean energy. And so I've been putting more of my money into solar and wind power. So yeah, I no longer have any investments in the oil industry or natural gas. That money is now in solar and wind.
Do you foresee a time when you might have energy independence, not just internationally, but locally, nationally, and so on?
I think it's possible, but it's going to take a lot of work and a lot of commitment. We're gonna have, we have some wonderful people, real, talented scientists, and engineers and whatnot working on that issue, but it doesn't happen overnight.
Well, do you feel that there's going to have to be, that environmentalists will have to overcome a huge blockade on part of the petroleum interests in order to start solar and wind power and so on?
Oh, of course, these are entrenched interests, they've been around for a very long time, you're talking a century, a century and a half almost.
Yeah.
So it'll take time, but I think more and more people are seeing the light. I mean, I saw the light on this issue myself. I think more and more people in Congress are seeing it, certainly in the state legislatures, Minnesota's made some advances towards clean energy, but it's gonna take time. I mean, I might not even see, I'm 67 years old, I might not even see it in my lifetime, so, but I think it will. But you're right, these entrenched interests. But, look at last year, President Obama made the decision to cancel the permit for the Keystone XL pipeline. Just about everyone thought at one time that was a done deal, but people mobilized and protest. And so he eventually listened to those concerns, and now there's a big protest going on in Standing Rock. And, for now, the permit for the Dakota Access Pipeline, at least that part of it that's near the Standing Rock Reservation, that has been temporarily suspended, the construction. But, the issue is far from settled. I mean, the protests are still going on. Dakota, Energy Transfer Partners still wants to build the pipeline. So, but I think if the people there in Standing Rock are persistent, and it's really been an historic protest. United tribes that were once enemies, like, the Sioux and Ojibwe, So, no, but it's like civil rights, women's rights, any issue that we've had to make progress on, it takes time, decades,
What are your feelings, Wynona?
Well, I'm glad you asked. He doesn't know this, but I have investments, big investments I've put a lot of my money in the oil in the Bakken with the fracking and also in coal. And I was disturbed to find out just recently now, the last couple of weeks here, that the Becker power plant, not far from here, has closed down 2 of its cookers, burners, the producers of the electricity down there. They're just allowing the most updated one to continue. 2 are going to be shut down. And I understand the community is going, the Minnesota Power is going to be helping the people that might have lost their job because of those closings to find other employment within the company somewhere. But even things like, as I drive by there sometimes to go to the Minneapolis area, I've noticed they have huge mountains of coal ash. And it has expanded. These are gargantuan. They're almost bigger than the plant itself. But I'm assuming, as would any smart individual assume, that they have liners underneath those piles of coal ash because they're so closely positioned to the Mississippi River. I'm sure that they're not polluting.
So you don't think it might be leaching into the groundwater?
No, I don't believe that. I think there are activists within this area, as a matter of fact. There are people who are terribly concerned about that and make it known that they are concerned about that. There's one lady here locally that puts a lot of stuff up on a blog, I'm told.
Yes, the crazy sign lady.
About things like that. That she has been watching for decades now, how those piles have grown and how the latest pile is dangerously even closer to the Mississippi River than it ever was before. And she's actually suggesting that might be leaching into the groundwater and to the Mississippi. Imagine that.
And calling for an investigation.
And it's people like that are going to cause people like me to lose a lot of my money.
Yeah.
And I don't like that.
Well, My goodness, I can imagine that you don't. All right, well, we touched on the environment, we touched on the elections, we touched on your friendships with the Trump family and the Mills family and how that's affected by politics. Sometimes I think that everything comes down to politics. It doesn't matter where you start, you can get to politics from there.
And money.
And money. But money and politics are pretty much the same thing from many points of view.
And I just want to add one more thing before we go for the day, because I won't see you now for a while. I'm disappointed that our daughter, Melissa, has chosen to not follow in the footsteps of us. That shouldn't reflect at all on our upbringing of her, because we have trained her from the time she was little that it's the most patriotic thing to do is to vote.
Mm-hmm.
And now that she's reached that age and she's shirking that responsibility, I just want to make sure that that's not reflecting on us and our parenting of her.
Well, you can only do so much to influence a child in their adulthood, yes.
Well, I do want to say though, that I think it speaks well of our parenting. Though. We also taught her to be independent, and to make her own mind on certain things. Her grandparents were a tremendous influence, especially her grandmother, on her. And, I'm proud of her that she's standing up. I might disagree myself and wish that she was voting, but I'm proud of her that she could take that stance. I mean, there is kind of a lot of, social pressure, peer pressure, whatever you want to call it, to vote, and people who don't vote are told that they're lazy or apathetic. Well, in her case, that's definitely not the situation at all. I mean, she cares deeply about, the issues. It's just that she doesn't find a candidate worthy of voting for her.
She doesn't want to write someone in?
No. So, no, she would just rather, not vote. But she's still very active. I mean, she's, very active, writing letters to elected officials, protesting, writing letters to the editor, signing petitions online. So it's not like she doesn't care. She's just chosen to make this her stance, not to vote.
Well, I have a great deal of admiration for Melissa, as you know. I think she's a fine mind and a fine heart. She's a
Maybe one day she can come on the show with us.
That would be great. I would love that. I'd love to have any of the kids, the billionaire kids, on the show. Okay. Well, I think we've covered everything. Thank you so much for joining us again. What are you going to be doing in the next year or so? Because it'll probably be a while.
Well, I tell you what, probably spending more time down in the Bahamas and Arizona. And I thought, how adventurous would it be if somehow I could find a way to sail all around Lake Superior? You hear people taking the circle tour with bicycles, maybe sail around it. So that's a possibility. Maybe seeing more parks, here in the state as well as national parks. So, I'll find a way to stay busy and.
Well, and don't forget about that fishing gear. And the viewers might not think that someone like myself that's into glamour and glitz would be interested in fishing. But that's not true.
No.
As a matter of fact, a lot of people around here are not aware. One of the best baits to use for catching catfish in this river, anywhere along in this little fall stretch, are the big sucker minnows that you can buy. They're about this long.
Oh, yeah.
4, 5, 6 inches long, and you can buy them at a gas station. The bait shop at the gas station north of town, as you're going out on the old highway towards Brainerd.
Mm-hmm.
I forget the name of that place.
You probably wouldn't be able to use it if you...
The gas station by the ethanol plant. They sell those big
Oh, I know which one you're referring to.
minnows.
Yes.
And you're wasting your money. Well, I shouldn't say that. They bite on leeches and they bite on crawlers. There's people even sometimes down here by the bottom of the dam that fish with pieces of hot dog and dead minnows and dead whatever, and they catch them on odd things like that. But the best is a large live sucker minnow.
Oh, and you're referring to that gas station that's near Morrison County Park. I think that's.
Yeah, by the Bell Prairie, yes, by the ethanol plant out that way. And you buy those. The only thing you can't, one thing, you're going to keep them in your refrigerator if you don't use them all. And don't use city water because that's got chlorine and other stuff in it that bait can't handle. So go and get a little bit of dip into the Mississippi River and get some fresh water from the Mississippi because that's their environment. And keep them in the refrigerator in a tin like that.
You are an environmentalist, Wynona.
Well, I just like fishing. I like the challenge.
To her that's almost like an epithet, but But I think even, you know, I mean, my wife cares about the environment. It may not
Well, sure I
always,
do, of course I
you
do.
know, show, but she does. I think we all want, you know, clean rivers, clean lakes, clean air, clean water, you know, just, you know, those essentials. And none of us want to see, you know, species disappear. So it's just, how do we accomplish that? That's kind of where people differ, you know.
Right, right. Thank you so much for being on the show with us tonight.
Thanks for having us.
You're welcome, and we hope to see you again very, very soon. Thank you so much for joining us, viewers, and we'll see you next time on 30 Minutes. Good night.